My hands tremble around the baseball bat as I sit in the dark hallway outside my 9-year-old son's bedroom. The house is deathly quiet except for the pounding of my heart in my ears. I've barricaded his door with a heavy dresser and snapped a padlock onto it earlier, desperate measures that make me feel sick to my stomach. No father should ever have to lock up his child. But tonight is not normal. My son is not my son tonight. I keep telling myself I'm doing this to protect him as much as to protect others. Outside, the wind howls faintly. A part of me hopes the storm might knock out the power or the internet, anything to stop what's coming. I glance at my watch, 2:13 a.m. Any second now. I tighten my grip on the bat, knuckles white. I try to swallow, but my throat is bone dry. A soft scuffling comes from behind Corey's door. My body goes rigid. He's awake. No, not awake, moving. I rise slowly from the chair I've planted in the hallway, every muscle tensed. There's a muffled thump, and then another. Footsteps? But how? The door is still shut, the padlock still secure. I haven't heard it open. Yet I hear the creak of floorboards outside the room now, right in front of me. I choke back a gasp as Corey steps through the solid wooden door, as if it were smoke. One moment, it's a closed door. The next, my son's thin form emerges right through it, passing through wood and metal without a sound. He stands in the hallway, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. The dresser I wedged against the door hasn't budged. He literally walked through the barrier. My stomach lurches with a mix of terror and disbelief. This can't be real. For a moment, I pray I'm dreaming. But the cold hardwood under my bare feet and the sting of sweat in my eyes tell me I'm awake. This is really happening. See, Corey? I whisper, voice shaking. I can barely get his name out. My little boy is standing there in his blue astronaut pajamas, but something is profoundly wrong. He shouldn't be able to be out here at all, not unless the thing controlling him has powers beyond anything I understand. He isn't acknowledging me. His eyes remain shut, but his head slowly tilts in my direction, as though sensing me through other means. That eerie smile stays plastered on his face. Not a child's smile, but a knowing, chilling grin that does not belong on a 9-year-old. In his small right hand, dangling at his side, I see the glint of a knife. My breath catches. It's a large kitchen knife, one I recognize from the set we keep locked in a drawer in our bedroom for safety. How did he get that? I hid that knife inside a locked drawer, and the key was tucked away in my car's glove compartment, yet somehow he has it. A drop of sweat slides down my temple as I realize no hiding place is safe from this passenger. I raise the baseball bat reflexively, stepping back. Corey, please? I beg, not sure if my son can hear me at all. Please stop. Wake up, bud. My voice cracks on the last word. His lips move, and a voice comes out, a voice that is not my son's. It's deeper, resonant, with a hollow echo as if spoken in a vast empty chamber. It wraps around the hall in a way that raises every hair on my body. Hello, Mr. Peterson. The thing using my son says calmly. It inclines Corey's head, almost politely. My blood runs cold. It knows my name. I shouldn't be surprised. It's been living in my house for months, unseen in the shadows of my son's slumber. But hearing that tone, ancient, amused, utterly inhuman, coming from my little boy's mouth, twists my insides with fury and fear. Gee, get out of him. I snarl, though my voice trembles. I brandish the bat, feet planted. Let my son go, you bastard. His eyelids remain closed, but the thing tilts Corey's head a bit more, as if regarding a petulant insect. Thank you for letting me use your son, it says, voice dripping with a grotesque facsimile of gratitude. He's been an excellent vehicle. My stomach heaves with disgust. I grip the bat so hard I feel the wood strain. He's not a vehicle, he's a child. I shout, anger momentarily overcoming fear. I won't let you hurt anyone else through him. I'll stop you. The thing controlling Corey just laughs softly, a condescending chuckle that echoes unnaturally down the hallway. The sound doesn't come from Corey's vocal cords alone. It's layered, distant, like multiple voices laughing in unison from far away. It's the most chilling sound I've ever heard. You can't stop us, the passenger says. It lifts the knife, and I see the steel flash in the dim light. My own son's face twists into an awful grin that is all wrong on him. None of you can. The contract was made. The boy wanted fame, and I gave it to him. My heart slams against my ribs. Contract? Fame? I don't understand half of what this entity is saying, but I do know one thing. It intends to use my son to commit something horrible tonight, something even worse than the murders it has already caused. And my wife, oh God, Jennifer. I lunge forward, swinging the baseball bat with every ounce of strength and desperation in me, aiming right for Corey's small body, or rather, the thing wearing his body. The bat whooshes through the air, and passes straight through him. I nearly lose my balance as I stumble forward, the momentum carrying me through empty space where there should have been solid matter. It's like trying to hit a projection or a ghost. I spin around in confusion. Corey, no, the passenger, is still standing there, unfazed, grinning that awful grin. A sob of frustration catches in my throat. It's useless, he's right, I can't even touch him. The passenger cocks my son's head with a taunting curiosity. We exist in the spaces between sleep and wake, it says conversationally, as if giving a lecture. Between life and death. You thought a locked door and a bat could stop me? How quaint. My pulse is racing wildly, panic flooding every cell. I back up further down the hall as the small figure steps toward me. W, what do you want? Why are you doing this to us? I croak. Part of me doesn't want to know, but I need to keep it talking. Maybe there's some part of my boy still in there that can hear me. He pauses a few feet away. The dim nightlight from Corey's room spills around his silhouette. In that half-glow, I catch a glimpse of my son's face properly. Eyes closed but somehow seeing, cheeks strangely gaunt, lips curled. Splattered across his pajama top, I realize, are dark rusty stains that I didn't notice at first. Blood. Dried and fresh both. My gorge rises. That's my wife's blood, I think, and almost collapsed then and there. But I can't afford to lose it now. The passenger continues, still in that impossibly calm voice. We've been watching your species for millennia, studying your capacity for violence, admiring your creativity and causing suffering. The words send a chill through me. Millennia? Studying our violence? This thing is ancient. I fight to keep my voice steady. If you've been watching so long, I say hoarsely, you know we also have the capacity for mercy. For love. Let my son go. Please. Take me instead if you have to, but leave him. My eyes burn with desperate tears. I'd do anything to free Corey from this nightmare. The passenger just shakes Corey's head slowly. The deal is already struck. It's far beyond one boy now, Mr. Peterson. Your son was just the beginning. Door. It lifts the knife and inspects the blade, almost admiring the way it gleams. And tonight, all 12 of us will act in synchronization. 12 cities, 12 stages, hundreds of targets. The viewers are calling it the convergence. Everyone loves a grand finale. My skin prickles as if iced water has been thrown on me. 12 of us? 12 children like Corey. I know from the detective's briefing there were others, all being orchestrated together tonight. Hundreds of targets, a grand finale. The weight of those words is staggering. How many lives will be lost? I think of my wife at the hospital working the night shift, oblivious to the danger heading her way. I think of her patients, sick children in beds, defenseless. The passenger's plan clicks together in my mind with horrific clarity. I won't let you do this, I whisper, voice shaking but firm. My back presses against the wall now, as the passenger steps past me. It moves with that same measured, mechanical grace I've seen on video, fluid yet eerily deliberate. As it passes, I catch a whiff of something cold and musty, like air from a tomb. You can't stop me. You can't even touch me, it purrs, echoing my own failure moments ago. In a burst of futile rage, I hurl myself at the entity, reaching out to grab my son, to grab anything. My hands swipe through thin air. It's like chasing smoke. I stumble and nearly fall again. Corey's form flickers in the corner of my vision, here but not here. I realize with dawning horror that the passenger is only partially in our reality, enough to manipulate objects like that knife, or the car keys it somehow retrieved, but not enough for me to physically restrain. It's walking calmly towards the door to the garage. I can only follow, shouting, pleading. Why are you doing this? I cry out. What do you even want? Is it just killing? Is that it? Are you some kind of demon? It pauses at the door and glances back at me with Corey's face. Those eyelids half open for the first time, and I see a glint of something dark where his warm brown eyes should be. Not white scara with pupils, just black, solid black from edge to edge. A quiet hiss escapes my son's lips, almost like enjoyment of my fear. We want what every artist wants, the passenger says softly. An audience. We want to perform. And your people how you love to watch. He gestures with the knife toward the living room, where the smashed remnants of our devices lie. You gave us the stage with your cameras and streams. You created the demand, the thirst to witness death without consequence. We're simply here to supply it, to satisfy your dark curiosities. Tonight will be a performance for the ages, and better yet, we finally get to participate instead of just watching from the sidelines of dreams. My mind reels. It speaks of performance and artists, like this is all some grand, twisted form of entertainment. A show for an audience that wants it. I feel sick understanding that it's not entirely wrong. Thousands of people have been gleefully watching my son's nightly atrocities. Strangers cheering murder. They enabled this horror just as much as the monsters themselves. The passenger is only giving them what they craved. In that moment, I feel a spark of defiant disgust. They're not an audience, they're monsters, I snap. They're sick. And you're worse for using a child too. It cuts me off with a sharp, humorless laugh. No, Mr. Peterson. I'm just a passenger, as I said. The monsters are the audience. Those thousands who tune in every night hoping to see blood. They created this. We're just the byproduct of their collective appetite. Your son and the others, they wanted fame, and we all got what we wanted. It smiles one more time, a grotesque facsimile of my son's happy grin, and then turns away. I lurch after, desperate. The garage entry door swings open of its own accord before he even touches it. In the darkness beyond, I see my car, interior light on, driver's side door yawning open. The engine is already running. How? I left the keys in my locked car outside specifically to prevent this, yet somehow he has them and got the car into the garage without even opening the garage door. Reality is truly meaningless to this creature. Corey, I shout, even though I know I'm not speaking to my son. Tears blur my vision now. This nightmare has spun completely out of control. Please, leave Jennifer alone. Leave those kids alone. Take me instead. You want a performance? I'll give you whatever you want. Just stop. My voice cracks into a sob. The passenger pauses in the threshold, just for an instant. It half turns as if considering my offer, but then shakes his head slowly. Offer appreciated, but you're too late, Mr. Peterson. The show's already started. Enjoy the rest of the performance. It steps into the garage. I make one last wild dive to grab Corey's arm, but he's suddenly not there. One moment in view, the next gone. He's already in the car, backing out. I hear the squeal of tires as my own sedan peels out into the night. The garage door begins closing automatically behind him, perhaps manipulated by the passenger's will. I'm left standing in the doorway, panting, tears streaming down my face, watching the red taillights disappear down the dark suburban street with my son trapped behind the wheel. In that horrific moment, I feel my heart shatter. My boy is gone, inhabited by something unstoppable, heading to butcher my wife and who knows how many others. And I can't even touch it. How the hell did we get here? Just yesterday, I was tucking Corey into bed like any other night, utterly unaware of the evil that had already nestled into our lives. My legs give out and I slump against the doorframe, a wail of despair caught in my throat. I have to do something. Anything to stop what's coming. If I can't chase them physically, I'll have to get help, warn people. Jennifer. I scramble up and dash out my front door into the night, barefoot and frantic, straight toward my neighbor's house. How did it come to this? If only I'd discovered the truth sooner. If only I'd understood what Dreamwatch was when I first saw it. 24 hours ago, I knew nothing about passengers or Dreamwatch or unimaginable horror. In fact, this time yesterday, my biggest worry was getting my shy 9-year-old to finish his homework. It was a little after 9 p.m. when I tucked Corey into bed that night, pressing a goodnight kiss to his forehead. He looked so small and peaceful under the covers, blinking up at me sleepily. "Night, buddy," I whispered, brushing a curl of brown hair off his forehead. He yawned and mumbled, "Good night, Dad." His blue rocket print pajamas were rumpled from our bedtime story ritual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was an absolutely typical Tuesday night in our home. I gently closed his door, not knowing I was shutting him in with something unspeakable. My wife Jennifer was already at work on night shift at St. Mary's Pediatric Ward, so I had the evening to myself. I settled onto the couch with a sigh, determined to catch up on some bills and maybe watch a late show before bed. On my way, I noticed Corey's iPad on the coffee table where he'd left it after dinner. I picked it up with a slight frown. We have rules about no screens before bed, and I was surprised he'd been using it so late. Probably sneaking in some YouTube after I left his room, I thought. Typical kid mischief. I resolved to check what he'd been up to, maybe ensure he hadn't installed any inappropriate apps or been chatting with strangers. I sank into the couch and woke the iPad from sleep. His wallpaper was a goofy selfie of us at the zoo, which made me smile despite my annoyance. I tapped open the apps folder and began to scroll. Everything seemed normal at first. Some math game, a drawing app, an ebook reader. But one icon near the bottom was unfamiliar. A black square with a tiny white eye logo and the word, Dreamwatch. What's Dreamwatch? I wondered. Corey had never mentioned it, and I certainly hadn't installed it for him. My first thought was that it could be one of those shady streaming platforms or, worse, something adult. My heart skipped at the idea of him accidentally stumbling into bad corners of the internet. I tapped the icon. It launched what looked like a live streaming app, chat interface, user profiles, video feeds. The screen that came up was my son's profile page. My confusion deepened. How did Corey, who's painfully shy and barely talks at school, end up live streaming? But there it was, username, CoreyP99, a profile picture of my own kid grinning a gap-toothed smile I recognized from last summer, and a short bio, watch me sleep. Strange things happen. Ghost moves my body. I gaped at the bio line in disbelief. Ghost moves my body? What kind of creepy joke was this? Beneath it, it showed 63,000 followers. I almost dropped the iPad. That number had to be a glitch or a hack. My sweet, quiet little boy, who had maybe 2 close friends and got nervous speaking in front of the class, somehow had an online following in the tens of thousands. My hands began to shake as I scrolled further. There was an archive of video streams, each listed by date, going back 6 months. Hundreds of them. Each was 8 to 10 hours long, basically the entire night's sleep. All with innocuous titles just named after the date. I felt like I'd stepped into the Twilight Zone. My son live streaming himself sleeping every night, and thousands of people watched this? It was absurd. It had to be some prank or maybe a single viral fluke that got exaggerated. Maybe he and his friends set up a dummy profile for laughs, or someone stole his photo. I clicked on the most recent archived stream, last night's date. The video began to play, timestamp 9:30 p.m., roughly when I had tucked him in. The camera angle was odd. It showed Corey's bedroom clearly, but higher up than I'd ever seen. It was like the iPad, presumably acting as the camera, was propped on top of his bookshelf or somehow mounted near the ceiling, giving a wide view of his bed and part of the room. I certainly never put it there. He must have done it himself after I left, I realized. On screen, by the soft glow of his nightlight, I saw my little boy curled up under his Star Wars comforter, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. Sleeping peacefully, exactly how I'd left him. For a moment, watching him look so innocent and calm, I smiled. It was oddly sweet. He looked like an angel. The overlay on the video showed a viewer count of 51,000 at its peak. My jaw dropped again. How on earth? The chat replay was available too, and it whizzed by so fast I couldn't catch full sentences, just fragments. Some users were typing strings of numbers. Others saying things like, get ready and T-5 minutes. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. in bright red digits as the stream reached that point. The chat at that moment suddenly exploded with messages, thousands of excited posts flooding in, emojis of skulls and knife icons, people typing, yes, it's happening, and here we go, and finally, the show. My heart rate ticked up in fear. The camera showed Corey's bed, and I watched in astonishment as my son sat bolt upright. His eyes remained closed, giving his face a strangely blank look, and for a second he just sat there, eerily still aside from the gentle rise and fall of his chest. The live chat was spamming all caps now. He's up. It's time, and a synchronized chant of sorts, passenger. Passenger, flooding the side of the screen. On the video, Corey moved stiffly, swinging his legs out of bed. I leaned closer, unable to tear my gaze from the screen. His movements were unnaturally smooth, almost mechanical. Normally when he wakes up needing the bathroom or a glass of water, he's groggy, stumbling, sometimes whimpering from a bad dream. But here he looked purposeful, precise, like a tiny soldier or a puppet on strings. He walked toward his closet with an even, measured pace. The lighting was dim, but the camera quality was surprisingly good. I saw him reach into the darkness of the closet and pull something out. It gleamed metallically. A chill ran through me as he stepped closer to the camera with it. In Corey's small hands was a claw hammer, one I'd never seen before. Certainly not one from my own toolbox. Where did he get a hammer? And why was he holding it at 2 a.m. in his sleep? My blood turned to ice as I watched the screen. Corey held the hammer up directly in view of the camera. The motion was deliberate, almost like he was showcasing it to his live audience. He slowly turned it, presenting the head, the claw, the handle, every angle, as if it were some prize on a game show. The chat went insane. Messages like, "Yes, finally," and "This is gonna be good" flew by faster than I could read. Some user called Killstream King wrote, "This is the best one yet, hammer time," and dozens responded in excitement. I felt bile at the back of my throat. My sweet little boy was being watched by thousands of strangers as he exhibited a weapon in his sleep. Why? What were they anticipating? The obvious answer, something violent, was too horrifying to accept, yet deep down I already knew. I was watching with mounting dread, a sick sense of inevitability churning inside me. On screen, Corey turned and walked out of the camera's view, carrying the hammer. The stream remained live, but now it was just a static shot of his empty bed and half-open closet. The chat continued to scroll relentlessly. I saw messages like, 20 minutes away, target should be asleep, and others commenting last time you took 2 hours. People were sharing timestamps from previous videos, making predictions. I bet 30 minutes till return. That neighbor lives close by. Neighbor. I felt dizzy. They knew? These viewers knew what he was doing, who he was targeting. I stood up in shock, nearly dropping the iPad. Oh my god, I whispered to the empty living room. They were talking about a neighbor. I fumbled for the pause but accidentally hit fast forward instead. The video scrubbed ahead, and I saw the timestamp jump from 2:14 to 5:30 a.m. I hit play again. The video was still recording the empty bedroom, nothing happening all those hours aside from an occasional flicker of the nightlight or a shift of shadows. At 5:30 a.m., the video showed Corey re-entering the frame. I pressed my hand over my mouth. His pajamas were splattered with dark patches of what could only be blood. His hands, face, even his tousled brown hair, I could see droplets of red across his cheek under the faint light. He moved with the same calm precision, no exhaustion or emotion, just walking methodically. In his hand, still, was the hammer. The claw end and head were smeared with something that dripped onto the hardwood as he approached his bed. My stomach flipped. I nearly gagged. The live chat from that moment was going wild. Celebratory emojis, clapping hands, one user declaring Garrison elimination confirmed, to which many others replied GG, good game, and cheering remarks. Garrison? That was Mr. Garrison, our next door neighbor. An 82-year-old retired teacher who was kindly tutoring Corey in math twice a week, free of charge, just to help him. Mr. Garrison, who baked us cookies at Christmas and sat on his porch feeding birds. I realized with dawning horror that the users were talking about him like a target that had been eliminated. On the video, Corey casually lifted his pillow and placed the hammer underneath it. Then he climbed into bed, laid down, and closed his eyes. Within seconds, his breathing steadied and he appeared fast asleep, as if nothing had happened at all. The blood on him, the hammer under the pillow. It was all terribly real, yet he just went back to sleep. I couldn't breathe. The archived stream ended a minute or two later, presumably when he woke up normally, likely when I came in to wake him for school, completely oblivious to what occurred in the night. My hands were shaking so violently that the iPad slipped from my grip and clattered onto the couch cushions. This isn't possible. This can't be real. I kept thinking those words, but the bloody images on the screen burned into my eyes, and the excited chorus of thousands of internet voyeurs echoing in my head told me it was real. Heart pounding, I launched the web browser on the iPad and frantically searched for local news. It was just past 6 a.m., maybe nothing was reported yet. But there it was, a headline on the local paper site, elderly man found dead in apparent break-in, police investigating. I tapped it. The article was brief, just a breaking news update. It stated that Mr. Harold Garrison, 82, had been discovered by his morning caregiver around 5:45 a.m. He was found in his bed, the victim of an apparent home invasion. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Time of death estimated between 2 and 5 a.m. I covered my mouth to stifle a cry. It matched exactly. My son, or rather whatever controlled him, had done this, under the watch of 50,000 gleeful spectators. I felt tears of horror and outrage blur my vision. They watched it happen. They knew and they watched and they cheered. Who are these people? Adrenaline surged, snapping me out of my paralysis. Corey. He was still in his room, presumably asleep in clean pajamas since I hadn't seen any blood when I tucked him in. The stream showed he'd changed back after killing Mr. Garrison. I needed to see, to confirm with my own eyes even though I feared what I'd find. I practically leapt off the couch and sprinted down the hall to Corey's room. My breath was ragged. I was bracing for a waking nightmare. Gently, trying not to retch, I eased open his door. The early morning light was just creeping in through the curtains. There he was, my little boy, curled on his side under the covers, looking angelic and peaceful, with a faint snore whistling from his nose. Exactly as the stream had shown mere minutes after he hid the hammer. My gorge rose at the smell. Even through the metallic scent of blood that hung faintly in the room, his face was that of an innocent child. It made the horror all the more jarring. I forced myself forward. With shaking fingers, I lifted the edge of his pillow. There, cold and solid against the mattress, was the hammer, just as I'd seen. The steel head was crusted with dried blood and bits of, oh god, gray hair. I swallowed a scream and set the pillow back silently. My hands were quivering. I knelt by the bed, head swimming. In the faint dawn light, I could see some brownish stains on the bedsheets too. This close, the coppery scent was unmistakable. Gently, inch by inch, I peeled back the comforter that was draped over Corey. My heart pounded in my throat. Underneath, he was wearing different pajamas than the ones I'd put him in. These were an older pair, light gray bottoms and a blue top, and they were spattered with blood. There were reddish smears and dark flecks all over, concentrated on the front. Some spots were still tacky, damp against the fabric. My stomach lurched. I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to keep from vomiting right on the floor. I noticed his feet. The socks were gone, and his small toes had faint smudges of something dark. The image of my barefoot child stepping in blood as he carried out gruesome acts made me physically ill. I let the blanket fall back over him and stumbled away, sucking in breaths to stave off the nausea and panic. This was reality. My son had somehow been co-opted into a horrifying game. He had murdered our neighbor in cold blood while sleeping and broadcast it to tens of thousands of strangers. And this had been going on for months without my knowledge. 8 confirmed kills, possibly more if the chat and hints were to be believed. Tears of guilt and horror burned down my cheeks. How could I have missed this? I felt like the worst father in the world. While I slept down the hall, content that my boy was safe in bed, he was out committing atrocities. And he truly had no memory. He was sleeping through it all, as innocent as he appeared. I had to wake him up. I had to confront him, and pray that my Corey, my real boy, had no idea and was not some kind of willing participant. My mind flashed to the bio on his Dreamwatch profile, Ghost Moves My Body. That implied he knew something strange was happening. At least, he believed something was controlling him in his sleep. Why didn't he tell me? Did he think I wouldn't believe him or that he'd get in trouble? Or had the thing told him not to? With a trembling hand, I reached out and gently shook his shoulder. Corey? I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. Corey, wake up, honey. He stirred, mumbling as any sleepy child would. Then his eyes blinked open, clear, hazel, normal. He looked up at me in confusion. Dad? What time is it? He asked in a small, groggy voice. He yawned, rubbing his eyes. There was my boy, just a kid who'd slept a little late on a Wednesday morning. I felt a flood of relief mixed with dread. He doesn't know. At least, not consciously. How was I going to even begin this conversation? I realized I was still crying silently, tears dripping onto his blanket. He noticed and sat up concerned. Dad? What's wrong? My throat closed. I gently put my hands on his shoulders. I probably looked like a lunatic to him, wild-eyed and trembling. How much should I say? I decided to start gently. Corey, did you have any dreams last night? Do you remember anything? He blinked, still shaking off sleep. I think I had that dream again. What dream? I pressed softly, exchanging a glance between his innocent face and the blood-smeared pajamas that he hadn't yet noticed in the dim light. The one where I'm floating, he said, frowning as he tried to recall. I'm above myself, like I can see myself in bed. And then I get up and do things, but I can't control it. It's like watching a movie of me. A chill ran down my spine. He did have some awareness then. What did you see yourself doing in the dream? Do you remember? I asked, voice tight. He squinted, clearly struggling to grasp fading images. Not all of it. But I think I went to visit Mr. Garrison. Is he okay? In the dream, something bad happened to him. Corey trailed off, a worried pout forming. I couldn't hold back the sob this time. My sweet boy was looking at me with genuine concern for our neighbor, having no idea that he, or something within him, had brutally killed the man just hours ago. My heart broke and boiled at once. Grief for my neighbor and my son's innocence. Fury at the thing that did this. I took a shaky breath. Corey, listen to me, I said, trying to sound calm. I pulled out the iPad which I'd set on the floor. With trembling fingers, I opened the Dreamwatch app and navigated to a clip of last night's stream, the part where he held up the hammer and left the room. I didn't want to show him the gore, but I needed him to see proof of the possession. I hit play and angled it toward him. He peered at it, curious and confused. On screen, there he was, eyes closed, holding that hammer up to the camera. I watched his face closely. The color drained from his cheeks as he realized what he was seeing. Dad, that's me, but I don't remember any of this, he whispered. His hands started shaking as he watched himself exit the room carrying the hammer. I paused the video. His breathing quickened. Dad, that's not me. I mean, it looks like me, but it's not me moving my body. That's the passenger. He spat out the last word with a mix of fear and anger. The passenger. He'd used that term in the bio too. What a passenger? Corey, please, you have to tell me everything. I'm not mad at you, I promise. I'm just trying to understand. I kept my voice gentle, suppressing the whirlwind of panic inside me. He looked down, ashamed and scared. His small hands fidgeted with a loose thread on the blanket. About 6 months ago, he began quietly, I was playing on my iPad really late. I know I'm not supposed to, but I couldn't sleep. I was just watching videos and stuff. Then something weird happened. This website popped up, a Dreamwatch. It was like a chat room with video. There was a message just for me in the chat. It said, do you want to be famous? I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of dread. This sounded like some online predator story at first, but clearly it was worse, given what we'd seen. Go on, I urged softly, squeezing his shoulder reassuringly. Corey swallowed. It said I could have millions of followers if I just let it borrow my body while I slept. It promised I'd never remember what happened, and that I'd never get in trouble because it wouldn't really be me doing it. I thought I thought it was just a game or a prank. I was 9 and it sounded like a cool idea to have followers. His voice cracked, tears welling up in his eyes. My heart clenched. He was just a lonely kid who thought he stumbled onto something exciting. And you said yes, I finished for him. Not as a question but a resigned realization. He nodded miserably. I typed yes. As soon as I did, the screen got super bright and I heard this whispering from the speakers, like many voices at once. They said the deal was made and that a passenger would visit me starting that night. Then the iPad just went back to normal. I thought maybe I imagined it or it was a dumb pop-up. But that night was the first time I had the floating dream. The first time the passenger came. I exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over my face. 6 months. My son had been dealing with this entity for 6 months and I had no clue. He must have been terrified and confused, but apparently it had kept its word. He never remembered the actual deeds, only that odd dream perspective. I realized he still might not know the full extent of what the passenger did using him. I looked him in the eyes. Corey, when the passenger uses you, it makes you hurt people. My voice shook despite my attempt to say it gently. Mr. Garrison, that bad thing you dreamed? It really happened. Mr. Garrison's dead, sweetheart. Corey's eyes widened in shock and immediate grief. And no, he can't be. He was so nice, I didn't want. A tear slipped down his cheek. He looked at his own hands in horror, as if only just noticing the brownish stains on them. Then his gaze fell to his blood-spattered shirt. Realization was hitting. He started to hyperventilate. It's not me. I didn't mean. Dad! He looked to me, panicked, seeking reassurance, absolution, anything. I pulled him into my arms, heartbreaking as he began to sob. Shush, I know, baby. I know it wasn't you, I murmured, stroking his hair even as tears blurred my vision again. It's not your fault. You didn't understand. He clung to me tightly, crying into my shirt. I held him until his sobs subsided a bit. When he calmed, I gently eased him back. Corey, we have to talk about what's been happening. I need to know everything so I can protect you and stop this, okay? He sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He glanced at the iPad's chat, which still showed people celebrating Mr. Garrison's elimination. With a shudder, he turned it face down, unable to look. Most nights, nothing happens, he said quietly. I just sleep and the stream is boring. But sometimes, every few weeks, always at 2:14 a.m. exactly. I mean the passenger makes me get up. And it uses me to do things. I never know what it did. I only see a little from above, like a blur, and then I'm back in bed. But I always wake up really tired those mornings, like I hardly slept. He hung his head. I was too scared to tell you or Mom. I thought I was having nightmares or sleepwalking, until I saw the chat on my iPad one morning. They were all talking about what my body did. That's when I knew it was real. So I tried to ignore it because I didn't want to get in trouble and it said I wouldn't. I felt a pang of sorrow. He'd been carrying the secret alone, afraid to confide in us. Corey, you should have told me. You wouldn't get in trouble, you're the victim in this, I said softly. I just wish I could have helped you sooner. He just looked down, ashamed. I couldn't be angry. He was just a child manipulated by an unimaginable force. I stood and paced the room, running my fingers through my hair to stop them shaking. I needed to understand the scope of this nightmare. These videos, I gestured to the iPad. They're all archived, right? Let's see exactly what happened over these 6 months. Over the next hour, I dug through Corey's Dreamwatch archive with him reluctantly at my side. With each video I clicked and skimmed, my horror grew. We compiled a timeline of terror. November 19th, 6 months ago, the first incident. At 2:14 a.m., the sleeping Corey retrieved a coil of rope from our basement and left the house, returning before sunrise. The next day, a local teen was found hanged in a nearby park. Police ruled it a suicide, but the detail that the victim's hands were tied behind their back was glossed over in reports. It now made terrible sense. The passenger staged it. I watched that video, jaw clenched, as my little boy expertly tied knots an Eagle Scout would envy, then vanished into the night. The chat was smaller back then, maybe 1,000 viewers, but they reacted with things like, holy shit, he's doing it. When Corey returned on stream hours later, I noted he washed his hands in the bathroom, cleverly out of frame, before hiding the rope back in the basement. December 3rd, Corey slipped out with a can of lighter fluid, taken from our garage, and a book of matches. That night, an abandoned house 10 blocks away burned to the ground. A transient person sleeping inside died in the blaze, unidentified. I had heard about the fire on the news, but never dreamed it was my son who said it. The stream showed Corey calmly climbing back in his window around 4 a.m., a faint orange glow visible on the horizon behind him from the fire. Chat was full of fire emojis and comments like crispy. I had to run to the bathroom and retch after seeing that. The casual encouragement in those messages. Who were these people? January 8th. He took my baseball bat from the hall closet. I watched in the video as my son, barefoot, in just Spider-Man pajamas, trudged out into a snowy night carrying that bat. He returned at 5 a.m., the bat dented and smeared with something dark. The news that week, a homeless man beaten to death under a highway overpass. I remembered feeling sadness at that story, even donating to a local shelter in his memory. Little did I know the killer had eaten breakfast across from me the next morning, hands clean, eyes innocent, asking if he could have extra syrup on his pancakes. February 15th. This one chilled me to the bone. The stream showed Corey rising at 2:14, then heading straight for my bedroom. On camera, I saw him stand over me as I slept and carefully lift my car keys from the dresser. He then walked out the front door, keys jingling in hand. I fast-forwarded and saw him sneak back in around 4:45 a.m., replace the keys silently, and return to bed. That was the night of a hit-and-run incident that killed a young woman out jogging. Jennifer Walsh. She was found by early morning runners on the side of the road, 12 blocks from our house. Police never found the driver because the car had no damage left behind, likely because it was our car, and I discovered only a very faint dent weeks later that I dismissed as a parking lot ding. Now I knew how it got there. I felt physically ill knowing I'd slept through my son literally standing over me and then taking my car to commit vehicular murder while I snored. The violation was indescribable. March 22nd. The video showed Corey slipping out the kitchen window with one of our sharpest cooking knives. He was gone longer this time, over 3 hours. When he returned on the stream, dawn was breaking. Later that morning, every family on our street woke to a nightmare. All of the neighborhood pets, cats, small dogs, were found mutilated in their yards. It was blamed on coyotes or some psychopath. Families were devastated, including ours, as our cat Muffin was among the victims. I remembered holding a sobbing Corey that morning as he cried over Muffin's body, both of us heartbroken thinking some wild animal did it. Now I realized with surreal horror, he had been acting. Or at least, his conscious self truly didn't know, but the passenger had used his hands to butcher our own cat among others. The thought made me convulse with grief and anger all over again. My boy had loved that cat dearly. The cruelty of using him to kill his own pet, these passengers truly reveled in suffering. And so it went on date after date, atrocity after atrocity. Every few weeks or so, always at 2:14 a.m., the passenger took over and made him kill. By now, the show had clearly gained a following. I noticed the viewer counts climbed from a few hundred early on to tens of thousands by the later videos. A whole depraved community had been spectating this in secret, right under our noses. Corey sat beside me, looking more and more numb as I recounted the evidence. He refused to watch most of the clips, burying his face in his knees after glimpsing one of the pet scenes. I didn't force him. I paused on one of the last videos, fists clenched. The chat replay was discussing the passenger leveling up and making bets on who the next victim would be. Some user named Nightwatcher88 wrote, "He's getting stronger. Soon he'll be ready for a grand show." Others responded with cryptic hype about something called the convergence. I made a mental note of that word showing up often. It clearly referred to a future event. My eyes drifted to the on-screen stats that were part of Corey's channel page. There was a pinned community post by an admin. It listed Corey's kill count, 8 confirmed, 3 probable. They were tallying my son's kills like points in a video game. I thought I'd run out of capacity for shock and disgust, but apparently not. I read on with mounting outrage. They had rankings for the top streamers, 12 kids in total, each with their own morbid stats. According to this, Corey was ranked number 3 in total kills, but number 1 in creativity. I wanted to smash the iPad right then. This was entertainment to them. These were children, being possessed, used to murder, and these twisted bastards were giving them awards? My vision blurred with red. I scrolled further and found a link to a Discord server. Without thinking, I clicked it. The invite was automatically accepted. Apparently Corey's account was already in the group. My screen filled with chat channels, thousands of members online. One channel, #the12, immediately caught my attention. Inside I found detailed profiles on each of the 12 child streamers across the country. They had everything, names, real or code names, approximate locations, city, state, ages 7 to 11, body counts, patterns of murder, and even predictions for their next moves. Some were speculating on when each would go next, referencing that they seemed to escalate in sync every few weeks. They had pieced together a pattern that law enforcement apparently had only just begun to see. For example, user True Crime Junkie had posted a theory. Notice how every time the passenger chooses a more ambitious kill, from animals to multiple victims, it coincides across several streamers. They're ramping up collectively. It's like they're learning from each other or pushing limits together. Convergence coming. A reply from an admin. Convergence equals all 12 act same night. Gonna be historic. That's open on body counts. I shook with rage reading that. They weren't just passively watching. They were anticipating and encouraging a mass slaughter. And tonight, if my timeline was right, tonight might be that convergence they kept hinting at. It made sense. Corey's passenger had basically confirmed it in our confrontation. 12 cities, 12 venues, hundreds of targets. The grand finale. My head spun. I realized with a start that I had lost track of time in this research frenzy. It was late morning now. Bright sun streamed through the window. My son sat curled up on his bed, arms around his knees, staring at nothing. He had a blank, traumatized look, like the shock had drained him of all emotion temporarily. I went to him and put a hand on his back. He flinched slightly, then relaxed when he saw it was just me. "Corey," I said softly, "I'm going to fix this. I won't let that thing use you ever again." I tried to sound confident, but inside I was frantic. We had to involve the police, maybe an exorcist? Hell, I'd call a priest or a psychic, whoever could get this demon out. But first, the police needed to know before evidence disappeared. Corey looked at me, eyes hollow. In an eerily calm voice he said, "That's not me doing those things, Dad. I'm just the vehicle." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, sent a chill through me. It sounded exactly like something the passenger itself had said. I gently took his shoulders. "You are not a vehicle. You're a kid, and you've been horribly used by this monster." I realized tears were slipping down my face again. "We have to stop this. I'm going to call the police right now." To my surprise, Corey didn't protest. But he did say quietly, "They already know." I paused, phone halfway to my ear. "What? What do you mean they know?" He looked down at his hands. "The passenger told me, some of the viewers are cops. They watch because they can't stop it. So they just watch it happen." He said it with a strange detachment. "And think about it, Dad. Thousands of people saw me sleeping here in bed while Mr. Garrison was killed. They're witnesses that I was asleep. How can anyone prove I did it if I was sleepwalking? No prosecutor will believe possession. I grimaced. As crazy as it all was, he had a point. It sounded like a perfect crime scenario. A child asleep on camera, but also physically at a murder scene with no conscious awareness. The detective I eventually spoke to confirmed exactly that. No court would convict or even charge a minor under those circumstances, especially lacking a rational explanation. Still, I had to try. I called 911, hands shaking. Through my panic, I managed to explain enough to get officers sent. I mentioned a live stream, a murder weapon, evidence in my house, probably sounding half insane. But the mention of Dreamwatch seemed to catch the dispatcher's attention. She put me on hold and then transferred me to a detective directly. Mr. Peterson? A weary male voice answered. This is Detective Lee. I understand you have some information regarding Dreamwatch. He said the name of the site like it left a bad taste in his mouth. I launched into a rambling explanation. My son, the sleep streams, the murders, Mr. Garrison, everything. The detective listened quietly, occasionally interjecting with a clarifying question. He didn't sound as shocked as I expected. In fact, he sounded sad. Like he'd heard variations of this before. When I finished, breathless and hoarse, he sighed heavily. Sir, we're aware of the Dreamwatch situation. You're not the first parent to report something like this. My heart both sank and leapt at once. Not the first? So others knew. So you believe me? I asked. I hadn't even realized tears were running down my face as I cradled the phone. We believe that you believe it, he replied diplomatically. And frankly, we've seen the streams ourselves. At least, the task force following these cases has. But our hands are tied. We have 63,000 witness accounts from last night that your son was in his bed at the time of the murder. The video evidence, from the stream itself, shows a child sleeping peacefully. Even if we believe something was controlling him, how do we prosecute that? A kid who isn't even awake while committing a crime. But the hammer, it's here. It's covered in the neighbor's blood. I protested. And his clothes. The evidence is all here. Isn't that enough? His tone was patient but firm. Evidence which, by your own admission, you touched when you found it. Could be planted. Could be contaminated. Mr. Peterson. I know how insane this sounds because I've been living it for months. But we're in a legal and logical quagmire. No jury would buy demonic possession or whatever this is as an explanation, and we can't very well lock up a child for sleepwalking under supernatural influence. I gripped the phone until my knuckles were white. So you're just going to do nothing? Let this continue. My voice was rising hysterically. These things are using kids to kill people. You know this and you're not stopping it. Another sigh. Calm down, sir. Please understand we have been trying. We have an ongoing joint investigation across multiple states. We just can't exactly issue arrest warrants for evil spirits. He muttered something under his breath I couldn't catch, then continued. Look, I'm going to send someone who's been on this case to your home. Detective Morrison. He's our lead on these incidents. He'll be there within an hour. Just sit tight, keep your son with you, and do not let him fall asleep if possible. Okay. I agreed, though I wasn't sure how I'd manage to keep a kid awake indefinitely. After I hung up, I gave Corey a shaky smile. Detectives are coming. They know a little about this. Maybe they can help. Corey didn't react much. He had a distant look in his eyes, staring at some spot on the carpet. I realized with a pang that he was likely in shock or deep dissociation. He'd just learned he was an unwitting serial killer, essentially, and that he'd possibly caused the death of someone he cared about, Mr. Garrison. That's enough to break anyone, let alone a 9-year-old. I sat next to him and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. He felt cold. I'm so sorry, buddy, I whispered. We're gonna fix this. I promise. He gave a tiny nod and leaned into me, but remained silent. Detective Morrison arrived about an hour later, as promised. I had thrown on a clean shirt and given Corey a quick wash-up and change of clothes, burning those bloodied pajamas in the fireplace. I couldn't stand to look at them. When I opened the door, Morrison flashed a badge and gave a tired smile. He looked to be in his late 40s, lean to the point of gaunt, with eyes that told me he'd seen too much. Dark circles hung under them like permanent bruises. Mr. Peterson? I'm Detective Alan Morrison. We shook hands. His grip was firm but weary. I invited him in, anxiety twisting my gut. Corey was on the couch, bundled in a blanket, staring at his hands. He glanced up nervously as the stranger entered. Morrison gave him a gentle nod. Hi, Corey. I'm here to help, okay? Corey didn't respond, just watched him warily. I cleared my throat. Thanks for coming. I have the evidence here. I gestured to the coffee table where I'd laid out the hammer, now wrapped in a trash bag to avoid further contamination, and the iPad with Dreamwatch open, as well as a USB drive where I'd saved copies of the archive streams in case they vanished. Morrison took in the setup and nodded approvingly. He sat in the armchair across from us and pulled out a notebook. I appreciate your quick thinking to preserve this, he said, indicating the digital evidence. We've been watching many of these streams in real time, but having the copies helps. He then proceeded to interview me and Corey. I recounted the whole story from my perspective, discovering the app, the neighbor's murder evidence, everything. It felt surreal speaking it out loud, but Morrison never looked skeptical. In fact, he often finished my sentences or nodded in understanding, as if he'd heard it before. Occasionally he'd ask Corey a direct question, but I could see he was trying not to traumatize him further. Corey answered softly when he could, confirming he had no memory of the acts, just the dream perspective and the initial deal. After about 30 minutes, Morrison sat back and rubbed his eyes. He scribbled a few last notes and then said, "Let me show you what we know." He opened a laptop he'd brought and turned it so I could see the screen. It displayed a map of the United States with 12 red dots scattered in different states, mostly Midwest, some East and West Coast. These are the locations of the 12 identified child streamers, he explained. I noticed one dot was near our city. He zoomed in, and indeed one was labeled with our town and Corey's name. The others had either first names or code names, plus ages. Around each red dot were clusters of black dots. Morrison pointed at those. Each black dot represents an unexplained death within roughly the radius a kid could travel from home in a night, either walking, biking, or if they took a car, within a couple hours round trip. He clicked on the black dots near our city, labels popped up showing dates, and a brief description. November 19th, teen boy 15, found hanged, Maple Park. December 3rd, body found in house fire, North End. January 8th, unidentified homeless man beaten underpass. February 15th, Jennifer Walsh, 27, hit and run. March 22nd, multiple pet killings, Oak Street area. April. The list went on, all corresponding to the nights I'd noted. It was comprehensive and chilling seeing it laid out like that. The pattern repeats for each of the 12, Morrison said. We only started connecting them a few months ago when a detective in Ohio had a case with a sleepwalking kid and a live stream. By the time we realized it was bigger than one isolated incident, there were already 7 kids involved. Now it's 12. All between the ages of 7 and 11. All streaming on Dreamwatch. He shook his head in frustration. I swallowed hard. Why those ages? He shrugged. Best guess, old enough to use the tech, young enough to be malleable. And people find it more novel or thrilling. I suppose a child doing these horrific things. Part of the sick allure. He grimaced in disgust. I looked at him desperate. So arrest them. Stop them. Lock them up somewhere safe where they can't be used. He grimaced. On what charges, Mr. Peterson? We can't exactly prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court that they knowingly did anything. Any defense attorney would point at the stream evidence of them sleeping as an ironclad alibi. Even if we believe some third party or entity is controlling them, where's our legal precedent? Who do we charge with the murders? And as for locking them up for safety, the kids are victims here. Innocents. And even if we tried to detain them, we have reason to believe the passengers wouldn't allow it. His voice darkened at that, and he pulled up a news article. The headline read, Detective dies in freak accident while stopping sleepwalking child. Morrison explained, jaw tight, that one of the early cases in Ohio involved an officer trying to physically intervene during a streaming event. He was attempting to carry the child out of the house while the kid was in that trance. Next thing we know, the detective somehow trips on his own staircase and breaks his neck. The kid just walks out the door and completes the, task before coming back to bed. Morrison tapped another tab, 2 more similar reports. An officer in Texas fell off a balcony trying to chase a sleepwalking girl. Another in California crashed his patrol car in a bizarre accident while shadowing a streaming child on foot. The passengers protect their hosts, Morrison said grimly. We've lost 3 good officers who tried to subdue or detain kids mid-performance. After that, our orders are to keep a distance during active events. Just monitor. We try to identify possible targets and warn them anonymously if we can, but as you know, it's nearly impossible to predict until it's happening. The targets seem random, until they're not. I slumped back, feeling sick and defeated. There has to be something we can do, I muttered. This is going to escalate, isn't it? They're building to something. I saw that word, convergence. And my son's passenger basically bragged about something big tonight. Hundreds of targets. Morrison's face looked even more haggard in the midday light. We've noticed the escalation too. Each event gets bolder. And the chatter among those online communities. Yeah, we're aware of the convergence idea. We don't know exactly what it entails, but we fear the same as you, a coordinated mass event with all 12 kids at once. He licked his dry lips. We've been scrambling to try to find the source, Dreamwatch's servers, admins, anything, but it's like chasing a ghost. The platform popped up less than a year ago on the dark web and spread through invite codes. It's heavily encrypted. We can't shut it down easily. And even if we did, would it stop the events or just the audience? We're not sure. I realized something then. These passengers wanted an audience. They kept talking about the show, the performance. If we took away the audience, would they stop? Or would they just be angry and kill anyway? There was no guarantee since they seemed to also relish the act of killing itself. But I had to try something. After Morrison left, taking the physical evidence with him, along with backups of the videos, I was left alone with Corey and my racing thoughts. The detective's parting words were, we'll have officers discreetly patrol your area tonight, but if it really is the convergence, we'll be stretched thin across all 12 locations. Just do what you can to keep Corey from going anywhere at 2:14 a.m. We'll try to monitor the streams and respond as best we can. Do what you can. Not exactly reassuring, but I intended to do what I must. It was afternoon. I sat Corey down in the kitchen for lunch, though neither of us had an appetite. He mostly pushed his sandwich around the plate, eyes downcast. I tried to lighten the mood, asking if he'd like to call his mom at work. I debated telling her any of this over the phone, but decided against it. She'd think I was insane or panic. Better to tell in person, or preferably after I solved it. He shook his head. He was barely speaking at all now, just retreating inward. I felt a rush of fierce protectiveness. I needed to be strong and proactive, if not for me, then for him. I would not let that thing take him again tonight. Whatever it took. After lunch, I went about systematically destroying every internet-connected device in the house. If Dreamwatch had no feed, maybe the passenger would lose interest or power, I reasoned. At the very least, the sickos wouldn't be able to watch. So I took a hammer, the same murder weapon, ironically, and smashed the iPad to bits in the driveway. Then the laptop. Then my smartphone, our smart TV, even the Wi-Fi router and Corey's Nintendo Switch for good measure. The catharsis of each shattering screen felt good, a righteous fury behind each swing. I was careful to keep Corey well back while I vented my anger on the electronics. He watched from the porch, wrapped in a blanket. He didn't protest at all. When I finished, panting and sweaty amidst the debris of our digital lives, Corey simply said in a flat tone, "It doesn't matter, Dad." I wiped my brow, chest still heaving from adrenaline. Of course it matters. No stream, no audience. Maybe that helps weaken it. He just looked at me with those dull eyes. The passenger doesn't need the stream to control me. That part was just for the audience, like a way to show off. But the connection to me is already made. It won't stop just because nobody's watching. I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was likely right. The passenger had come to him before he ever had an audience. That first night he said yes to the deal. The stream simply followed. Still, I needed to do everything possible to sever the link. Perhaps no screen would at least make it harder for the passenger to create those doorways it spoke of, with thousands focusing attention. Well, it's done now, I said quietly, glancing at the carnage of circuitry around me. We'll just have to see. As dusk crept in, the tension in our house skyrocketed. I had piled furniture in front of every exterior door and window downstairs, not that it helped last time, but I needed to do something. I also found an old padlock for Corey's door. The one I'd used earlier in the hallway was built in, but I wanted extra. I locked him in again, though it sickened me. This time I also bound his wrists loosely with a soft rope and did the same around his ankles, not tight enough to hurt, just enough to maybe slow him down if he got free. He submitted to this without complaint, as if he felt he deserved to be restrained. That broke my heart. "It's just until morning," I assured him, kissing his forehead. He was sitting up in bed, looking so small and sad. "Then we'll go get Mom together and explain everything. She'll understand." He nodded uncertainly. As I turned to leave, he suddenly spoke, voice trembling. "Dad, I'm scared." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "I know, bud. Me too. What if someone gets hurt tonight because of me?" His voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to promise him it wouldn't happen, but I'd already seen too much to be sure. Instead, I said, "Whatever happens, it's not your fault, okay? You remember that. You're a good kid, Corey. You never wanted any of this." I had to blink rapidly to keep my own tears at bay. He sniffled. If I do bad things and I can't remember, does that mean I'm a bad person?" That undid me. I stepped back in and hugged him tight, rope bindings and all. "No, absolutely not. You are not a bad person. You're my son. You have a good heart. This is something evil using you, that's all. We're going to get rid of it and you'll be okay." My voice was fierce, determined. He hugged me back as best he could with tied wrists. "I'm sorry, Dad," he mumbled into my shoulder. "Shia, you've nothing to be sorry for." I pulled away after a long moment. His eyes were dry. I think he had cried himself out earlier. Now he looked just frightened and resigned. I checked the clock, 9 p.m. Almost bedtime, normally. But I wasn't about to let him go to sleep. I figured if he was conscious, maybe the passenger couldn't hijack him. That was something we hadn't tested. All incidents happened after he was asleep. Perhaps the creature needed him to be sleeping. "Listen, buddy," I said gently, "I need you to try to stay awake for me, okay? At least until after 2:14. Think you can do that?" He nodded, understanding. "I'll try. I'll be right outside the door the whole time. You won't be alone." I forced a smile. I locked him in, pushed the dresser back in front, and took up position on my chair in the hallway again, that across my lap. I also had a backup this time, a taser I'd gotten years ago after a break-in scare. I hadn't had occasion to use it, but I clipped it to my belt now. If by some miracle the passenger was tangible enough at some point, maybe a few thousand volts could disrupt it. Wishful thinking, but worth a shot. From behind the door, I heard the muffled sound of Corey's handheld game console chime to life. I had left that with him as a means to stay awake, since it wasn't internet-connected, old-school cartridge type. For a while, I listened to the faint music of a Mario game and the occasional thump as he presumably hopped in bed to stay alert. The normalcy of it, a kid playing games before bed, contrasted painfully with the abnormal situation. I found myself praying. I'm not a religious man particularly, but I pleaded with any power that be to help my son, to stop the evil creeping toward us. The hours dragged. 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Each minute a small eternity. Sometime around midnight, I realized the game sounds had stopped. Worried, I gently knocked. "Corey? You okay?" "Yeah," he answered, voice a bit drowsy. "Just taking a break." "I'm okay." "Don't fall asleep, kiddo," I urged. "How about I start singing that silly camp song you like? Would that keep you up?" I attempted some lightness. He snorted. "Dad, I'm not 5. A hint of humor, that was good." I chuckled softly, relief flooding me for the moment. "Alright, just checking. Hang in there, buddy. Only a couple more hours to go." 12:30 a.m. 1 a.m. My nerves were shot from adrenaline. I found myself compulsively checking the time every minute, foot tapping, palms sweaty around the bat. Through the quiet house, every little creak or rustle made me jump. At one point the furnace kicked on and I nearly swung at the air thinking it was something supernatural. At 1:45 a.m., I gently called to Corey again. He responded, sounding more alert now. Probably fear was keeping him wide awake as the dreaded time neared. "I'm still here, Dad. We're almost through this," I said, more to reassure myself. I prayed I was right. 1:55 a.m. I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled and inhaled deeply to steady myself. I rose from the chair and stretched my stiff legs, never letting go of the bat. 2:10 a.m. Only 4 minutes to the witching hour. My hands were trembling again. I clenched the bat harder to try to hide it. From inside the room, I heard Corey suddenly yelp in surprise. A loud thump followed, and a clatter like something falling. "Corey." I banged on the door. "What happened?" His voice was shaky. I think I fell for a second. Out of bed. I'm okay. Dad, I feel weird." I stiffened. No. Was the passenger coming even though he was awake? The plan might be failing. Weird how? Are you okay? I'm so tired. And cold. He sounded disoriented, voice slurring with sudden exhaustion. It's pulling on me, Dad. I don't want to, but I'm so sleepy. I swore under my breath. He was crashing. Some force was dragging him under, like a sedative hitting. Corey, stand up right now. Stand up and jump. Do anything to keep yourself awake. I shouted through the door. I rattled the knob uselessly, forgetting I'd locked it. Inside, I heard him groan. Then the sound of staggering footsteps. I'm trying, my eyes won't. Then another heavy thud as if he'd collapsed. Shit. I fumbled with the keys to unlock the padlock I'd put on. My son was clearly succumbing to sleep despite all efforts. If he was going under, I needed to be in there with him. Screw the risk. My fingers were slick with sweat and trembling, making it hard to fit the small key. After 2 failed tries, I jammed it in and twisted until the padlock clicked open. I shoved the dresser aside with a loud scrape and flung the door open. Corey lay on the floor by his bed, in his pajamas, hands still loosely bound. He was on his side, breathing slowly, eyes shut. Corey. I rushed to him and shook him. Wake up, son, come on. He felt limp, like a rag doll. Not fully asleep, more like sedated. He moaned but didn't open his eyes. 2:14 a.m. My watch beeped softly, marking the exact time. And just like that, it was too late. Corey's body went rigid, then slowly pushed itself up from the floor in a weird marionette-like motion. I stumbled back as he stood up in front of me, head hanging limp, arms dangling at his sides. Then his head lifted, eyes still closed, but a smile curling his lips. That smile. The passenger had taken hold fully, even though he'd been technically conscious. I cursed myself. I walked right into its trap. Maybe it had wanted me to come in, to be close. Because now I was inside the room, and Corey/the passenger was between me and the doorway. Hello again, Mr. Peterson. It said as casually as you please. That deep timbre, echoing eerily off the pastel blue walls of my boy's bedroom. Hearing it here, in the intimate safe space we'd painted with clouds and Star Wars decals, felt like desecration. I swallowed, raising the bat defensively. It hadn't picked up the knife yet. Maybe it didn't have one this time? I had hidden all sharp objects in a padlock safe earlier today, but clearly hiding didn't stop it last time with the knife. Don't do this, I pleaded. You don't have to do this. Why hurt so many? If it's an audience you want, surely you've proven your point. You have thousands watching. Just stop this madness now. Go back where you came from. I knew I was begging, but pride be damned. I'd grovel if it meant sparing the lives of those targets, including my wife. The passenger cocked Corey's head, looking almost amused. Go back? Oh no. We quite enjoy it here. It's been so long since we could touch your world. We were merely observers in nightmares and shadows. Now, thanks to the door you helpfully opened, we get to play. It stretched Corey's arms in front of him, experimentally flexing his fingers. Its gaze, despite closed eyes, drifted down, noticing the ropes loosely looped at his wrists. With a little smirk, it just snapped the bindings as though they were toy handcuffs, not even bothering to untie. The rope around his ankles got similarly torn away with an awkward kick. My son's slender frame shouldn't have that kind of strength, but under possession he did. I took a step back, bat still raised. My mind raced for a strategy. It hadn't lunged at me or anything, likely because, as before, I was no threat to it physically. It could probably walk right through me if it wanted. But maybe I could reason or delay it until police arrived or something. If they were monitoring, surely they'd see the streams go active and move in. As if reading my thoughts, the passenger suddenly chuckled. The police won't interfere, Mr. Peterson. They know what happens when they try. By now, Detective Morrison is likely occupied with his own family matters anyway. I felt a stab of fear. Morrison's family, he'd mentioned a daughter if I recall. If she had been watching, oh god. The passenger grinned wider, clearly seeing comprehension dawn on my face. I had to try something else. My eyes flicked to the window. It was shut and likely wouldn't open easily. I had hammered the frames down during my security frenzy. But maybe I could yell loud enough for neighbors to hear and witness? Not that that would stop anything, as evidenced by watchers so far. Maybe the taser? I reached slowly for it on my belt. The passenger noticed, tilting Corey's head curiously. I pulled it out and thumbed it on. A crackle of electricity arced between the prongs, casting a brief blue glow. It was meant for close contact, but I had a model that could shoot small probes attached to wires a short distance. Stay right where you are, I warned, trying to muster authority. My voice shook, undermining it. The passenger's expression didn't even change. It took one step toward me, hands at its sides, utterly fearless. Or what? You'll taste me. It made Corey's mouth smile mockingly. By all means. I gritted my teeth and pulled the trigger. 2 small electrodes fired out, trailing thin wires, and struck Corey's chest, one on his pajama top, the other just below on his abdomen. The device clicked, delivering a high-voltage shock that should drop a grown man to his knees. Corey's body jolted, his back arching slightly as the current ran through him. For a second, I thought it might actually work. He spasmed and stood still. I released the trigger, the cycle complete. Wisps of smoke curled from the contact points on his shirt where it singed. The smell of burnt cloth and maybe a bit of flesh hit my nostrils. My stomach turned knowing I just effectively electrocuted my own child's body. But if it stunned the creature? The passenger rolled Corey's neck as if loosening a kink, then reached up and plucked the barbed electrodes out one by one. Underneath, Corey's skin was red and blistered at the points of entry. I winced. That had to hurt, yet he displayed no sign of pain or even irritation. He examined the little dart-like prongs between his fingers and tossed them aside. Interesting sensation, he mused. I suppose that toy might work on a human intruder, but it's hardly more than a tickle to us. I felt despair creeping in. There was truly nothing I could do to stop this entity physically. It had all the advantages. The passenger stepped closer until it was only a pace away. I held the bat in front of me like a cross before a vampire, but we both knew it was useless. He looked up at me. Corey was much shorter than I, with that eerie closed-eye smile. I know you think you're protecting him, it said quietly. It's sweet, really. Parental love and all that. But you must accept, Mr. Peterson, that your son belongs to me now. Body and soul, as you put it. The contract is sealed. And tonight, his role in the performance must be fulfilled. I was quivering, both from terror and boiling rage at those words. Belongs to me, body and soul. I wanted to grab this thing by the throat and choke it out of sheer paternal fury, even knowing it wouldn't work. But some primal protective instinct almost overtook my reason. My muscles tensed to lunge, but the passenger sensed it and casually stepped through me. Yes, it simply walked right forward, and I felt a blast of frigid air as Corey's form phased through my torso. It was like being dunked in ice water. I gasped, the shock of it knocking the wind out of me. I spun around, the passenger was now behind me, strolling toward the door. It paused in the doorway and half-turned, Corey's face in profile. Oh, and don't worry, it added with a smirk. Tomorrow morning, your son won't remember a thing. He'll wake up to the aftermath, covered in blood, mommy dead, dozens of little corpses, and he'll have no idea why. Imagine the trauma. It'll break his mind deliciously. Guilt is such a beautifully corrosive emotion. It makes future possessions so much easier. By the next time we want to use him, he'll probably welcome oblivion. That image, my son shattered by guilt and grief, was the final straw. With a roar, I charged, swinging the bat wildly at his smug form in the doorway. I might as well have been swinging at smoke. The bat whooshed through empty air, and I nearly stumbled down the hall from the follow-through. The passenger had already glided away toward the garage entry. I scrambled after, abandoning the bat and instead snatching up a heavy ceramic lamp from a side table as I passed the living room. If I couldn't hit him, maybe I could block his path, physically restrain Corey's body somehow? Maybe lock myself around him like a human vice and not let go? By the time I reached the garage, the engine of our car was already turning over. Of course, it had prepared the vehicle earlier. I hurled the lamp at the driver's side window as the car started backing up. It shattered against the glass, doing nothing. The car screeched out, sideswiping the garbage bins, and fishtailed onto the street. I sprinted after it a few steps, then realized how futile that was. In seconds, the taillights disappeared around the corner. I stood there in the middle of the street, barefoot, in nothing but sweatpants and a t-shirt, under the pale glow of a street lamp. It was drizzling lightly, the cool rain prickling my skin. My neighbors' houses were dark, of course, 2:30 a.m., everyone asleep. Except, my eyes drifted to the Patterson house across the street. The elderly couple were heavy sleepers, but I noticed a light was on upstairs where their granddaughter Emma's room was. She sometimes stayed over. A faint blue glow, perhaps a tablet or phone screen reflecting off the window. The thought made me uneasy. Emma was 12 and tech-savvy. Could she be watching all this? I remembered the Discord and how it had thousands of members, including presumably local folks. Was she one of them? My heart pounded. The passenger had said, the viewers' children are next. If Emma was a viewer. I ran to the Pattersons' front door and banged on it frantically. I didn't care if I looked a lunatic. I needed a phone and to warn someone. After a minute, a groggy Mrs. Patterson cracked open the door in her robe, eyes widening when she recognized me. Bill? What on earth? She exclaimed, seeing my frantic state, drenched, shaking, wild-eyed. Call 911. I nearly shouted. Right now, call them. Send them to St. Mary's Hospital Pediatric Ward. The children's ward. Jennifer's working, she's in danger. There's an attack happening or about to happen there. My neighbor's face contorted in confusion and alarm. What? Slow down, what do you mean attack? What's going on? She looked behind me as if expecting to see a threat. I grabbed her shoulders, probably too hard in my desperation. It's Corey, I rasped. He's not himself. There's no time to explain, please. Just trust me. I know how it sounds, but he's something. Took him and it's going to hurt a lot of people, starting with the hospital. Call 911 now. Maybe it was my tone or the sheer terror on my face, but she nodded and hurried to fetch her phone from a side table. I followed her into the foyer. As she dialed and began urgently relaying what I told her to the operator, I glanced up the stairs toward where I saw that blue glow. Halfway down the steps stood 12-year-old Emma, wearing pajamas and holding her phone in one hand. She was staring at me, her face. It's hard to describe. Blank, yet intense. Her eyes looked glassy, almost like she was in a trance. The phone screen's blue light made her look ghostly. Emma, sweetheart, go back to bed, Mrs. Patterson said quickly, noticing her too. She covered the phone receiver and whispered to me. She's been up all night glued to that darn phone. Teenagers. I had a sinking feeling. I gently approached the stairs. Emma? Are you okay? The girl didn't answer. She just kept watching me. Then I noticed her phone screen. It was open to a streaming app. I saw multiple video feeds in a grid, like 12 windows. Yes, 12 streams all playing simultaneously. Even from a distance I recognized the scenes. One was the interior of St. Mary's Hospital, Corey's stream obviously, since I glimpsed my wife Jennifer in her scrubs on the video, sitting at a nurse's station. Another feed showed what looked like an indoor playground somewhere, a daycare at night. Another a residential house full of decorations, maybe a birthday party. The others I couldn't make out from where I stood, but each was a different location. The convergence, all 12 streaming at once. It was happening right now. and Emma was watching them all on a multi-stream interface. "Emma, honey, what are you watching?" I asked, though I already knew. My voice was gentle, but my heart was pounding. She finally blinked and focused on me. Her expression crumpled into one of shame, perhaps. I'm sorry," she whispered. She looked like a frightened little girl in that moment, not a near teen. "I just wanted to see. Everyone in the group's been talking about tonight." I didn't want to miss it. Mrs. Patterson had finished the 911 call and was now frowning at her granddaughter. "Miss what? What group? Are you watching one of those violent shows again? Your mother told you to stay off those forums." I held up a hand to silence her gently, keeping my eyes on Emma. "It's okay, just tell me, Emma. What did they say about tonight? And what do you mean you needed to learn because tomorrow it's our turn?" I repeated the phrase I'd heard her say on the stream chat earlier, without identifying that I knew. I pretended maybe she'd mentioned it to me, or that I overheard. Emma's face went pale. Her lower lip trembled. She glanced at her grandma, clearly not wanting to get into trouble. But something in my expression must have convinced her honesty was needed. "There's a community. We call ourselves dreamers. We watch the streams, all of us kids. It's like a game or a show. It was just fun at first, like ooh spooky ghost controlling a kid doing pranks, but then it got serious. People were really dying." She swallowed, tears in her eyes. I tried to stop watching a few times, but I couldn't. It's like I needed to see what happened next. And everyone at school was talking about it in code, sharing theories. I wanted to know more. This lined up with what the passenger said. The audience couldn't look away, even if some felt they should. And kids, being impressionable, got sucked right in. Emma continued, sniffing. "There were these chat messages. Some of the dreamer group said the 12 kids were just the start. That we, the viewers, could be part of it too if we accepted the passenger. They told us how to do it, to type those words in chat at the right time, to focus really hard on the screen when the static came." I thought it was just a roleplay thing, but I was curious. So I did it. I typed it. She broke into a sob. "They said the passenger would come for us next. I thought they meant we'd get to be famous too, or we'd get chosen to have a passenger. It sounded cool at first, but now I'm scared. I didn't really want anyone to get hurt. I just. My head was spinning, but I gently shushed her, coming up the stairs to put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Emma, do you feel anything different? When they started the convergence, did anything happen to you?" She wiped her eyes. "I know not yet. But the chat says phase 2 is starting now. That the kids who accepted would be next. I don't understand what that means. Phase 2. That term again. In the Discord messages I saw, phase 2 begins tomorrow. Your children are next." The passenger had taunted me about it too, that the viewers' children would be taken after the initial hosts. Mrs. Patterson was watching this exchange with growing horror, piecing together enough. Good lord, this is that thing from the news, isn't it? Those kids who did those murders sleepwalking. She had heard of it after all, at least vaguely. "Emma, you've been watching that filth?" Her voice rose in anger and fear. "Mrs. Patterson," I interjected firmly, "right now we need to keep Emma safe. We can deal with the rest later." The older woman looked at me, then at her terrified grandchild, and nodded mutely, clearly at a loss. Suddenly, Emma's phone, still open to the multi-stream, lit up with a flood of messages in the chat overlay. I peered at it. The chat was going wild with lines repeating. "Phase 2 initiated. We accept the passenger. We accept the passenger." Over and over, from hundreds of users. Emma gasped. I feel weird." She swayed on her feet, and I caught her as her eyes rolled slightly. She wasn't falling asleep like Corey did. This was different. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, like she was suddenly far away. "Emma, stay with me," I said urgently, lowering her to sit on the steps. "Don't listen to it. Whatever you hear in your head, fight it, okay?" I had no idea if that'd help. She blinked rapidly, fighting something. "It's whispering," she muttered. "In my head, it's whispering my name." She clutched her temples. I looked to the phone again. Now the streams. Something was happening. All 12 streams on her screen had gone to static or distortion. The chat was calling it glitching or destabilizing. I saw one feed briefly flash an image. It was Corey's stream, showing him at the hospital hallway, but overlaid with multiple exposures of him in different positions. Then it cut to static again. Others were similar. The children were flickering in and out, some floating, some in multiple places at once. The passengers were struggling? It sure looked like it. Detective Morrison's voice echoed in my memory. "Something's interfering with the passengers. They're destabilizing." At the time on the phone, he didn't know what, but now I realized what it likely was. Phase 2 itself. The act of crossing over into all these new hosts, the viewer kids, was diverting their power, causing a momentary glitch in controlling the original 12. That's why those kids woke up mid-act. The passengers had temporarily left them to possess the new army. That meant, ironically, Phase 2 might have saved some lives at the hospital, etc., by yanking the passenger out before it finished. But now Phase 2 was in full swing, meaning Emma and hundreds of thousands of other kids were about to become the new sleepwalking killers. I gently shook Emma. Hey, stay with me. We need to get rid of that phone, okay? It's the link. I pried it from her hand. She was oddly unresisting now, her arms limp. Her eyes were half closed, and I recognized that look. It mirrored how Corey looks when the passenger is in control. I quickly shut off the device and pocketed it. Too late. Emma stood up, almost knocking me off balance. Her eyes slid shut and a serene yet chilling smile spread across her lips. I'd seen that expression too on my son. "God," I whispered. It had her. Without a word, Emma turned and started walking down the steps, heading for the front door. Mrs. Patterson cried out, "Emma? Emma, where are you going?" She rushed to block the door, but Emma kept advancing, heedless. I jumped forward to hold the girl back, but she suddenly dodged with surprising agility and slipped past me. She opened the door, and in that moment, I knew. I couldn't stop her physically. Just like Corey, she was in that trance that gave them unusual strength or intangibility. Sure enough, when her grandmother tried to grab her arm, Emma twisted away with unnatural strength and the older woman fell to the floor. I helped Mrs. Patterson up as we both watched, helpless, while the 12-year-old marched out into the rainy night in her bare feet and flannel PJs. Out on the street, we saw dozens of other children emerging from houses, all in pajamas, all walking with that same mechanical purpose. It was a haunting procession of blank-faced kids moving in unison down the road, all heading the same direction, east toward downtown. Streetlights glinted off their open, unseeing eyes. Mrs. Patterson clutched my arm in terror. What is this? Bill, what's happening? I shook my head, throat tight. The beginning of something horrible, I said softly. Then I remembered Detective Morrison. I still had Mrs. Patterson's phone in my hand from when she gave it to me after calling 911. I quickly dialed the number he'd called me from earlier. He picked up after one ring. "Peterson," he barked, clearly stressed. I could hear a lot of background noise, voices, maybe radio chatter. "Are you seeing this? They're mobilizing." Yes, I yelled into the phone over the thunder now rumbling. Every kid who was watching. They all just up and left their houses. A whole line of them heading downtown here. It's like a zombie parade. "We've got the same reports from multiple cities," Morrison said. "They're converging on specific locations. Not sure why those spots. Perhaps symbolic, or strategic in number of potential victims. The original 12 streams have gone dark, but now we're seeing thousands of new streams going live, presumably each of these kids broadcasting their journey. Our systems can't even handle tracking it all." He cursed. "We're trying to get ahead of them, but it's chaos." I filled him in quickly that my neighbor's granddaughter was one of them, and the snippet of what she told me before possession. He already knew most. They'd infiltrated some chats and seen the "we accept" pledges. As we spoke, I followed the flow of children at a distance. With Mrs. Patterson shakily coming along, I told her to go back, but she wouldn't, too worried about Emma. We kept well back, not daring to approach the kids directly. There must have been around 30 from our immediate neighborhood, ranging from about 7 up to maybe 16, some teens too, apparently viewers. They all marched silently in the drizzle. It was the eeriest sight of my life. The children congregated at the town square park, right by the big central fountain. By the time we arrived near the edges, there were already hundreds gathered in perfect concentric circles around the fountain, and more were trickling in from every street, like moths drawn to a flame. Some police cars were on the periphery with lights flashing, officers standing around looking utterly baffled and helpless. Parents too hovered around, calling their kids' names frantically, some sobbing, some praying. Not one child responded. I gave a start as I recognized Detective Morrison himself among the crowd, speaking urgently into a radio. I went up to him. He looked at me, drenched in wild-eyed probably as much as I was. "My daughter," he said by way of greeting, voice thin. "She's 8. One of them." His haunted expression spoke volumes. "I'm so sorry," I replied, meaning it. In that moment, we weren't just a cop and a father, we were 2 terrified dads. He straightened up, steeling himself. "We can't exactly arrest 300,000 kids," he muttered, echoing what he'd said earlier. "We can't even budge them." He gestured. I saw an officer physically try to pick up a small boy at the edge of the formation. The child was stiff as a statue and the officer grunted, failing to lift him. It was like the kid weighed a ton or was glued to the ground. After a few tries, the officer stepped back, shaking his head. "They're waiting," I said, watching the strange silent assembly. Indeed, none of the children moved now. They just stood, eyes closed, in a patient pose, as rain plastered their hair to their skulls and trickled down their faces. "When is whatever's next supposed to happen?" As if in answer, a sudden hush fell. The few parents who had been shouting quieted as they noticed something changing. I realized the children had all, in eerie synchronization, lifted their faces upward and opened their eyes. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as those nearest saw the eyes. Pure black. The same inky black eyes I'd seen on Corey during his possession. Thousands of them now, on children of all ages and sizes, reflecting no light, just void. Then, all together, in perfect unison, the children spoke. "We are the passengers." The voice was a chorus, hundreds of young voices speaking as one, yet somehow layered with a deeper timbre and otherworldly resonance underlying the words. It was deafening in its power. Every human present, parents, cops, bystanders, froze in shock or instinctive fear. "We have crossed the threshold," the unified children continued. "The door is open. The performance begins now." I felt a shiver run through me. Even though I'd known it was coming, the sheer scale of hearing it multiplied was gut-wrenching. Beside me, Mrs. Patterson silently wept, clasping her hands in prayer. Morrison's jaw clenched. He had a service pistol in his hand, but clearly had no idea what to even do with it in this situation. "Shoot the kids?" "Of course not." There was a brief pause. Then the voices resumed. 400,000 vessels prepared. 400,000 stages for our art. You created us with your watching. With your thirst for blood without consequence. We are your appetite made manifest. Now, the show truly begins. As one, the children pivoted to face outward from the fountain. Then they began to walk. Not aimlessly, each seemed to have a direction, a destination. And I knew in my bones what that meant. Each had a target. Maybe multiple. They were off to kill. No, oh God, please no. A mother moaned as her two little boys, hand in hand, marched right by her without a glance, heading down a street. She tried to grab them, but they slid from her grasp with uncanny strength and kept going. Pandemonium broke out among the adults. Some ran after their kids pleading. Others stood paralyzed in horror. The police were on their radios shouting for backup, for anything. Some cops looked like they might try brute force to restrain the kids leaving, but there were too many and it clearly didn't work physically. I felt myself moving, not even consciously, following a cluster of kids heading down Oak Street. Among them I spotted Emma's blonde head at the front. She was carrying something now, a large kitchen knife gleaming in her hand. Emma. I called uselessly. Out of the corner of my eye I saw other children brandishing weapons too. A group of older boys each had baseball bats. A tiny girl dragged a hatchet along the sidewalk, sparks flying as metal scraped concrete. A preteen boy carried a jerrycan sloshing with gasoline. They must have cached these items earlier or known exactly where to get them without breaking stride. All prepared for their debut performance. Lights were coming on in houses as the commotion roused more people. Unfortunate residents stepped out onto their porches just in time to see packs of black-eyed children swarming toward them. The screams began soon after. I will never forget the sound that followed. The collective wail of an entire town being terrorized by its own youth. The passengers directed them with malevolent purpose. I heard windows shattering, car alarms, the whoosh of something catching fire, and above it all that damned discordant chorus of giggles and shouts, children's voices, but not really children, gleeful as they set about their violent tasks. Morrison had followed too and was now grabbing me, pulling me back toward the park. It's not safe, we have to regroup, we can't fight them like this, he shouted over the chaos. He was right, running after individual kids achieved nothing except putting oneself in danger. Reports crackled over his radio that in other cities, similar scenes were playing out. Mass casualties piling up, emergency services overwhelmed. We stumbled back to the fountain area, which ironically was now one of the calmer spots since the children had left it. Only shocked parents and some police remained there, many crying or in stunned silence. I wondered if any were hurt or... Then I realized, belatedly, the original 12 children, including Corey, had presumably woken up from their possession when Phase 2 started. They'd be themselves again, covered in whatever carnage they wrought, likely in custody or being taken to hospitals. And my wife, oh God. I turned to Morrison, grabbing his coat. Jennifer, my wife, did the police reach the hospital? Is she? I couldn't finish. My knees were weak. Morrison's expression told me the answer even before he spoke. His eyes were full of sorrow. I'm sorry, Bill. I heard on the radio. St. Mary's Pediatric Wing. It was a massacre. By the time units got there it was too late. My guts turned to water. I had to sit on the edge of the fountain before I collapsed. She was gone. My Jennifer. 23 children and my wife among them. Butchered by our son. A strangled cry tore out of my throat. I held my head in my hands, tugging my hair, wanting to rip it out. I could not even process it fully, but the agony came on in waves. The only thing that kept me from completely falling apart was a distant thought. Corey will blame himself. That horror was yet to come, when he realized what he'd done while under control. Morrison laid a hand on my shoulder, eyes shining with tears of his own. He opened his mouth to speak when suddenly a new flurry of chatter came over his radio, and simultaneously I noticed the live streams on a phone someone left on the ground. The streams were doing that glitching again. The passenger's control was wavering, maybe as they prepared for Phase 3. I looked up in time to see some of the rampaging children in the distance falter mid-attack. A 10-year-old boy swinging a bat at a man paused, blinked, and dropped the weapon, looking around in confusion and horror at what he'd done. Similar scenes happened elsewhere, kids snapping out of it unexpectedly. It's happening again, I said, nudging Morrison. They're destabilizing. He listened to frantic updates. Apparently all the child hosts globally just lost possession simultaneously, waking to find themselves in the middle of crimes. Those that could were breaking down in screams or fleeing. Some unfortunately were killed by armed victims fighting back in those brief moments. I saw one vigilante neighbor shoot a teen boy who had broken into his garage with a knife. The boy had just woken and started crying when the bullet hit him. It was awful. So much tragedy in mere minutes. What's happening? Why did they stop? A bewildered officer near us asked. Morrison answered, voice grim. Because they're moving to Phase 3. The next tier of hosts. As if on cue, my borrowed phone buzzed in my pocket, a text alert. With shaking hands I pulled it out and saw the message from an unknown number. Phase 3 begins at sunset. Adult viewers are now eligible for passenger selection. Thank you for watching. Thank you for wanting. The performance is eternal. The audience is the show. The same message flashed apparently on every screen around. Digital billboards in the square flickered to it. TVs in a nearby electronics store window scrolled it. Even someone's smartwatch. The passengers were broadcasting their announcement like an Amber Alert to all connected devices. I read those lines and felt ice settle in my stomach. Adult viewers, that meant anyone like me, or any older person who had been avidly following the streams. Perhaps the line between child and adult viewer was blurred, but essentially, now no one who had watched was off limits. Morrison stared at his phone screen where the same text displayed. They're expanding, he murmured. Damn them. They're going to take everyone who gave them an audience, eventually. I thought about how many might qualify. The streams had blown up online once news spread of the massacres. Even people who didn't start as fans might have tuned in out of morbid curiosity. The passengers wouldn't care if you watched out of fascination or horror. A view is a view, an invitation. By that measure, the number of potential hosts could be staggering. Around us, the aftermath of Phase 2 was unfolding. Dozens of children now stood or sat in shock in the streets and yards, crying or catatonic, near the injured or dead bodies of their targets. Neighbors, family members, random unlucky people. Parents rushed to grab and comfort those whose own kids were victims or perpetrators. Sirens wailed as emergency vehicles tried to navigate the chaos. And yet over all that, a new eerie development emerged. Adults were now beginning to walk into the square just like the kids had earlier. I recognized them. Neighbors, teachers, shopkeepers, people I'd seen on our community boards discussing the case, or known to have followed the drama. Their eyes were closed as they trudged in, silent and stiff. One of them was Mrs. Patterson, who had at some point let go of me and drifted off. Now she stood among the fountain circle, eyes shut, face blank. She must have watched enough through Emma's involvements that she counted as a viewer. Others I spotted included a mailman who I'd overheard chatting about the streams at the post office, one of the high school coaches known to be into true crime stuff, even the young woman who runs the local coffee shop. She had a Dream Watch sticker on her laptop last week, I recalled belatedly. Jesus, I said, nudging Morrison and pointing. The adults, they're going under already. They said sunset, but these folks. He cursed. Maybe those who were watching right now got triggered early. Or the schedule is accelerating. He went over and waved a hand in front of one middle-aged man's face. No reaction. He gently shook him. The man toppled like a mannequin, not even attempting to catch his fall, and lay there, still in trance. We hefted him back up to avoid him drowning in a puddle. It was like moving a heavy sack of grain, zero assistance from his muscles. One by one, each adult's mouth opened and from their throats issued those distant voices, all overlapping, not quite as synchronized as the kids, perhaps as they were taken individually over these minutes. They spoke as if addressing us, but also no one in particular. We tried to resist watching. One woman's voice echoed. But we couldn't look away, uttered a man next to her. Another. Every view was a vote. Every comment a prayer. Every share an invitation. I recognized some of these lines. They'd been posted in chats by presumably possessed watchers. Hearing them spoken live was chilling beyond belief. A chorus of them now. You built us out of your own darkness, and now we're here to perform it back to you. Mrs. Patterson, eyes still shut, turned her face upwards and her frail voice joined a final unified whisper. The show must go on. The show will always go on. Everyone eventually becomes part of the show. At that, her eyes snapped open. No longer human eyes, but solid black. All the other entranced adults did the same. I stumbled back instinctively. There were fewer of them than the kids earlier. Maybe many adult viewers weren't local, or were still on their way, or the threshold wasn't fully reached for all yet. In our town square, maybe 50 adults now stood possessed. Their faces now bore that same slight smile. It was beyond creepy to see elders and peers like this. I braced for them to start attacking, but they didn't move yet. Likely they too were waiting a cue, or until Phase 3's officials start at sunset, though the sky was still gray with dawn. Perhaps this was just an early infiltration of some. Morrison and I retreated to the fountain where a handful of police aimed guns uncertainly at the possessed adults, not firing but just warily covering them. I put a hand on one officer's arm. Don't bother, I said tiredly. Hurting the hosts doesn't stop the passenger. It might just kill an innocent person. He lowered the gun, shaking. What do we do then? Just stand here and wait for them to kill us. No one had an answer. The truth was we'd lost. Humanity had lost. This was beyond any of us to contain now. As I stood there, soaked, exhausted, numb, I realized one important thing I still had to do. Find my son. Corey was likely taken into custody at the hospital, or soon would be. He'd be utterly devastated, and he needed his father. Screw everything else, I needed to get to him. I turned to Morrison to convey this when I suddenly felt wrong, like a dizziness or dissociation rolling over me. The background noise around dimmed. My vision swam. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Morrison's concerned face came in and out of focus. His lips were moving. Peterson? You okay? But his voice sounded distant, echoey. I tried to respond but then realized with horror, my limbs weren't obeying me. I wasn't dizzy, I was being puppet. My left foot stepped forward entirely on its own, then the right. I jerked, trying to stop, but it was like being on a moving sidewalk. And no, oh no, I gasped, as my hands raised without my input. In one of them, I just noticed, was a large kitchen knife. Where had I gotten that? My brain spun. I must have picked it up at some point, maybe from a fallen kid's arsenal when helping someone, or maybe, did I have it since the neighbors? I honestly couldn't recall. Perhaps I'd armed myself subconsciously. Regardless, it was now in my grasp, and I had no control. Morrison's eyes widened. Peterson. Fight it. He grabbed my shoulders, trying to hold me back. But just like with the kids, my body moved independently with unnatural strength. I shoved him aside like he was made of paper. He sprawled to the wet ground, cursing. I walked past him, each step mechanical. Inside I was screaming, trying to regain command. Unlike Corey's full sleeping oblivion, I was awake and aware, making this even more horrifying. It was like being a passenger in my own body. The irony of that term was not lost on me, even in this panic. I heard the voices around as I marched through the park, bystanders shouting, Bill? Bill, stop. A neighbor who knew me. A cop yelling, drop the knife. Though I couldn't even if I tried. They didn't fire at me, thankfully, maybe realizing I was not myself. Some ran after me, but quickly were distracted by another calamity, a new flood of phone alerts likely meaning Phase 4 or more adult possessions. I glimpsed one officer suddenly doubling over as his own face went slack. He'd watched too, presumably, and now he was joining the party. My feet carried me relentlessly out of the square. I realized, with a mix of terror and heartbreak, where it was taking me. The elementary school 6 blocks away, where a summer day camp was in session for kids. I remember the passenger's last words to me earlier, about going to the school. It had set this target for me already. I tried everything to break free, mentally reciting my name, my will, trying to drop the knife or even fall over. My muscles ignored me. At one point, I managed to slightly slow my pace, like a temporary glitch when I focused on a lamppost and tried to hug it, but I slid right off and continued. It was hopeless. Tears of frustration filled my eyes as the school came into view. I could hear the faint laughter of kids on the playground behind the building. Summer camp recess. My heart pounded. I am going to slaughter those children, I thought with revulsion. With my own hands. Inside, I was a hurricane of anguish, guilt, rage. Is this my punishment? I wondered. For not protecting my family, for letting all this happen? If so, it was too cruel a sentence. As I neared the gate, something unexpected happened. Corey's voice sounded in my head. For a second, I thought maybe the passenger was tricking me through hallucination, but it felt separate from the presence controlling me. It was like remembering something he'd said, but vividly and with intent. It wasn't you, Dad. It was my body, my hands. I said yes to the deal. I wanted to be famous. And now I am. Those were his words from our phone call earlier. The despair in them had broken my heart then, and recalling them now fueled a fire in me. No. My son had blamed himself for something an inhuman force did. And now here I was about to do the same. It wasn't me doing this, but if I survived I'd feel the crushing guilt nonetheless. Unless I stopped it. The passenger's monologue also echoed. We are your appetite made manifest. We are the monster you created. Somehow, those thoughts stirred an idea in my mind. If our collective desire for violence gave them power, could our desire for mercy or guilt weaken them? Guilt is a strong emotion too. They even said they exploit it to soften hosts for later. But what if someone embraced guilt up front, as a way to refuse the thrill? Would that be an act of resistance? It was a long shot, but I had nothing else. As I reached the outer yard of the school, children still obliviously playing tag in the distance, I focused every ounce of my mind on remorse. I thought of every victim. My wife, Mr. Garrison, those pets, the homeless man, and I fully accepted the blame as if I had done it all consciously. I imagined begging their forgiveness, imagined the crushing weight of that sorrow filling me. I essentially tried to guilt-trip myself to the extreme. It hurt. Emotionally, spiritually, it hurt like hell. But something shifted inside. The passenger's hold wavered for a split second. My left foot actually halted mid-step. My right arm, the knife arm, trembled. It was as if the strings on the puppet loosened. Encouraged, I doubled down in my mind. I screamed I'm sorry over and over. Sorry to Jennifer, sorry to our son, sorry to everyone watching that I couldn't stop this, sorry to the world for being part of its dark side. Each sincere apology seemed to act like a sandbag anchoring me, slowing the forward momentum another notch. At the same time, I became acutely aware of a presence, like a shadow in my own mind, writhing, frustrated. It snarled and urged me to move, but I faced it head-on inside and essentially told it, I won't enjoy this. I will never give you the satisfaction. If you do this through me, I will live with unending guilt and sorrow. I will make my soul a dead land where you'll find no sustenance, only bitterness. I don't know if it understood, or if the psychology even works that way, but I felt it struggle. Because maybe, just maybe, what they wanted was for me to revel in it, to secretly allow the violence by blaming them fully. But I wasn't going to absolve myself. I would take full responsibility, even if irrational, and thus deny it the perverse joy. In a weird way, I decided to own the act even as it took place, robbing the passenger of pure authorship. All of this internal battle took place in seconds as I stood about 20 yards from the children, who were now noticing me, a strange man with a knife just outside their fence. A few kids pointed. Some ran inside to presumably tell a teacher. I probably looked terrifying, soaked and with an undoubtedly deranged expression. Perhaps I was shaking or weeping. I don't even recall. But I did recall regaining control of my neck. I nodded, physically nodding to myself as if to affirm. Yes, I will bear this cross. I will suffer rather than let it enjoy this. A flicker of my reflection in a puddle showed my eyes for a split second. They looked like mine, not black, though I can't be sure. The presence in me let out a furious silent scream, like nails on a chalkboard in my head. My legs buckled as it receded abruptly, like a tug-of-war rope that suddenly slackens when the opponent yields. I collapsed to my knees on the wet grass, the knife falling from my hand. I knelt there shaking and sobbing, soaked and muddy, but myself again. The passenger was gone, at least, for now. I could feel its absence like the lifting of a great weight or a dark curtain. Had I truly driven it out, or had it left to find an easier host? I didn't know. But I was free. By then, school staff had rushed out, corralling the confused and frightened children away from me. I was soon surrounded by police, guns drawn, shouting orders. I didn't resist as they forced me down and cuffed me. I welcomed it actually, or a human touch, human authority, even if rough. I was alive and sane, and so were those kids, unharmed. That's what mattered in that moment. 1 month later. I sit here now, writing this account from a secure psychiatric facility. They say writing it all down can be therapeutic, but I'm not sure anything can really ease the trauma we've all endured. Perhaps it's also a confession, though who exactly do I confess to when the whole world knows what happened? The days following the convergence, now also called Night of the Passengers in the media, were a blur of horror and disbelief worldwide. The death toll. I can hardly process it. They estimate over 38,000 people were killed that day in Phase 2 and 3 combined, across the country, and more globally in copycat events. 38,000 souls lost because we allowed monsters into our homes via our curiosity and screens. Among them, my beloved wife Jennifer. I had to formally identify her body, or what was left of it since I was next of kin. That moment will haunt me forever. My son, Corey, is alive. He's in juvenile custody awaiting legal decisions. The authorities don't know what to do with the 12 original children. They're as much victims as perpetrators. Public sentiment is sympathetic in general, but some are calling for them to be locked away forever as a precaution. It's an ugly situation. I've only been allowed very brief supervised contact with Corey so far, since I myself am under observation after what happened. I was nearly charged with attempted something at the school until witnesses testified I collapsed without harming anyone. The first time I saw Corey after that night was at the police station, through a two-way mirror. He was curled in a blanket, looking so small and broken. I wanted to burst in and hug him, but they wouldn't let me at first. They said he was in a fragile state, prone to dissociation and panic. He had remembered every detail of what the passenger did at the hospital. Apparently they left him that gift of memory. He'd been repeating over and over, I killed Mom, in a monotone until they sedated him. Hearing that shattered whatever pieces of my heart remained. I eventually got to sit with him in a monitored room. He couldn't even look me in the eyes. He just kept saying he was sorry, that he deserved to die, that he made a deal with the devil and it was all his fault. I, of course, told him I was the one who was sorry, that I failed to protect him, to protect Mom. We held each other and cried for what felt like hours. There were no adequate words for our sorrow and regret. But I made sure to tell him this clearly. He's not a monster. We were both tools used by monsters. That distinction might save his sanity one day, I hope. What of the monsters themselves? The passengers? Are they gone? I doubt it. We saw how quickly they spread once invited. Sure, the internet was largely shut down for a while after. The government pulled the plug on many platforms. Dreamwatch was destroyed. Its servers smashed by vigilantes apparently. But as the text said, the audience is the show. We remain humans with free will and our flaws. The potential for them to rise again is always there, so long as we secretly crave the spectacle of violence. Maybe we learned our lesson. Viewership of violent media plummeted in the aftermath. There's been a collective movement to push back against sensationalizing cruelty. But human nature is what it is. Already I've heard whispers of conspiracy theorists claiming the passengers never existed, that it was just mass hysteria or mind control by the government. Some even idolize the incident as a wild form of entertainment in retrospect. It makes me sick, but also fearful. Those attitudes, that skepticism, could open the door again someday. As for me, I will likely stand trial or at least undergo extensive psychiatric evaluation for my role. I'm prepared to accept whatever comes. The guilt I intentionally embraced to break the possession still lives in me, and I intend to keep it as a reminder, a shield even. I should feel guilty. I wanted to watch something horrible out of curiosity and became part of its creation. We all did, collectively. Perhaps if enough of us carry that guilt constructively, it can keep the passengers at bay. The doctors here tell me I have PTSD. Who wouldn't? And they worry I'm too fixated on blame. But I know the truth. Taking responsibility, not legal, but moral, for our dark desires is the only way forward. We have to own that we created the demand that almost ended our world. Only then can we choose to change. I dream of Jennifer often. In my dreams, she's not angry or frightened. She puts her hand on my chest and says softly, it's not your fault. But I always answer, it is a little. And that means I can prevent it next time maybe. I don't know if that's healthy, but it's what drives me now. Corey is due to be released into my custody soon, under monitoring. Many of the original 12 are being reunited with families, since it's clear they were not acting under their own volition. There's even talk of legislation to classify possessed coercion differently in law. If only we could convict the real perpetrators. But how does one punish a collective psychic entity? For now, I think awareness is our best weapon. This experience has changed the world. People are more cautious, more skeptical of what they engage with online. Parents are more protective. The Dreamwatch massacre will be a cautionary tale for generations, I hope. A reminder that the monsters out there are often ones we invite in ourselves through our darker curiosities. I intend to devote my life to my son's healing and to spreading that warning however I can. Perhaps that will be my atonement. I'll teach Corey and others that seeking fame or excitement at the cost of conscience is never worth it. That the line between observer and participant can blur faster than you realize. In a sense, the passenger was right about one thing, the audience is the show. We become what we choose to consume. If we consume darkness eagerly, we shouldn't be surprised when it manifests in us. But conversely, I have to believe the opposite is true too. If we nourish light, empathy, kindness, maybe those can manifest just as powerfully. Maybe there are passengers of goodness out there, waiting to be created by collective hope. It sounds fanciful, but in a world where malevolent dream demons became real, is it so crazy to imagine benevolent forces could too? In the end, all I know is that my son and I survived. We're scarred inside and out, but we're alive. We have a chance to heal, to do better, to honor Jennifer's memory by helping ensure nothing like this happens again. The ending of the story is not neat or happy. Too much was lost. But it's also not the end. We carry forward, with lessons learned in blood and tears. This morning, I was allowed to walk outside under supervision. The sun was rising, casting a golden hue on the hospital garden. I closed my eyes and felt its warmth, and for a moment, I imagined it washing away all the darkness of that endless night a month ago. I whispered an apology to every soul hurt by what happened, and a promise to try and make it right somehow. When I opened my eyes, I saw Corey standing at the window of his adjacent ward, looking at me. He raised a hand in a small wave. I waved back, managing a smile. I could see he'd been crying, likely nightmares, but in that tentative gesture, I also saw hope. We both did terrible things under the thrall of monsters. Yet here we still are, father and son, bound by love, guilt, and the resolve to move forward together. The passengers may always be lurking, but as long as we keep watch over each other, truly watch, with care and understanding, not morbid curiosity, I believe we can keep them at bay. Our story became a nightmare, but perhaps its ending can be the start of something better. A world that chooses compassion over carnage, where the only things that go viral are kindness and understanding. It's a fragile hope, but it's what keeps me going. And as I prepare to bring Corey home, that hope is what I'll cling to every time I tuck him into bed. No more cameras, no more strangers peering in. Just a light left on to keep the darkness away, and me watching over him, a real loving audience of one, to make sure his dreams stay his own.